So we've got your 3 best tips, and you said you promised us 4.
Yes, correct. 4th tip.
Hi, this is Kyela Puech, real estate in the south of France. So I find myself here with my friend Julien Emard, who is a mortgage broker. And Julien, we are in a very lovely place. Yes. And we're amongst beer as opposed to wine grapes today.
Yes, yes, indeed.
But it's pretty spectacular, and it's very good beer.
The view is wonderful also.
The view is amazing, yeah. But I think the views kind of epitomise the south of France.
Yes,
it is just totally beautiful, isn't it? Anyway, we're not here to talk about the views, to talk about the fact that you're a broker. So correct. You organise mainly complicated mortgages for international clients.
Yes, you're right.
And I have to say that I'm going to use this opportunity to thank you, because you're pretty amazing. As soon as I have an offer from an international client, it's always nice to be able to send it your way. And then I kind of like keep everything crossed that everything is going to be okay, and it's over to you. So once I have that offer and I send you the email introducing you to the client, what do you do?
So what happens?
What happens exactly?
So it's, I wouldn't say easy, because all the clients have different profiles. So basically what I do is I get into contact with your clients. First of all, I always check if it's doable. Check what kind of status they have, if they're employed, if they're self-employed, if they have different companies, which country they come from, and because all those aspects can have an impact on the mortgage.
And on taxes, I guess, yeah?
Taxes. There's loads of different kind of different factors that can be applied. This is where we actually have to look through basically if your client has a file which is doable, and if we can get him a mortgage or not.
Okay. So that's kind of mathematics.
It's mathematics. It's also reviewing all the different kind of aspects. So getting a mortgage in France has a very strict process, due to the different kind of regulation that are in place. Mainly in France, we're based on what we call the norm HCSF, which is basically giving us a kind of debt ratio which cannot be over 35%. So basically 35% of your income will include all your mortgages that you have in France and in other countries.
Okay, but just mortgages or also other debts?
Mortgages and lease eventually for a car lease.
For a car lease?
But that's basically it.
Okay.
Other debts such as I'd say if you have some taxes, if you have your electricity bill, all of that is not taken in account.
But any loans that you might have?
Loans, mortgage,
car loan,
car lease will have an impact.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So it's basically reviewing all this kind of different documents in order to tell you if it's doable or not. The first thing is that we need to do that for the realtor where you are, in order for you to start moving on with the process. Mm-hmm. What I like to do, it's before you even go and sign the compromis, which usually is from the moment you have an offer on the table until you get the compromis, takes a bit of time with our friends the notaire. And what I like to do, it's having all the documents and that the file is ready in order to already have a kind of pre-approval, or at least a feeling of which bank will follow easily on this profile and go through the process with our customer and in order to obtain the mortgage.
The access that you have to lenders, is that like BNP International? Is that kind of like your ordinary banks, or do you have tailor-made solutions as well? So
the old BNP International buyers does no longer exist. Okay. They are different. There's another entity for BNP, which is BNP non-residents, based in Paris. But we have loads of options.
Right.
I do not work with only one bank,
Yeah.
otherwise it'd be too difficult. I work with several banks, and this will have an impact based on several factors. Example, nationality of a client, where the type of income they have, meaning that if you're self-employed, not all the banks will lend, only some banks. If you're a US person, the fact that a person is American and is or even if he's French, British, any other nationality, but is a US tax resident,
Yeah.
this will also have an impact.
Right.
Some banks will go and some banks will not go.
Okay.
So this also varies from one bank to another, but we have several options. Most of the options are either private banking.
Yeah.
So we're talking to private entities such as, so like you were saying, you were talking about BNP non-resident, but also BNP Private Banking is one of the partners. We have other options like Banque Populaire. We have options with a bit more not famous banking solutions, such as a new partner which is called CCF My Mortgage in France. So they're one of the also entities. We do have a lot of also banking solutions in Switzerland
Okay.
and in Monaco,
Okay. Right.
depending on the profile of the client.
Okay. Okay. So that possibly will also include opening a bank account in that bank.
Yes.
And okay, but that could actually be really interesting because it's not always easy to open a French bank account if you're a non-resident.
You're right. It's not always easy. There are also other factors. A bank who will be lending to a non-resident coming to France will request some kind of conditions.
Right.
Usually the conditions that a bank will want is at least a little bit of placement
Yeah.
with the bank.
Yeah.
And also they will always want that you have a house insurance and you also get your mortgage insurance with them. That's really traditional.
We know that over the last 2-3 years, the real estate market has been quite difficult, and the banking, the lenders have been quite sort of the rules have changed a little bit. The interest
right.
rates have gone up.
Yes.
What's the situation today in terms of banking?
So 2023 was a very complex year for mortgage brokers, but also for realtors. For people coming from abroad, rates went up to close to 5%, which made things a little difficult on the French market in order to access. But the reality is that the rates have gone up throughout the world.
Yeah.
And when the rates are at 5 in France, they're probably around 7 or 8 in different countries.
Right.
Meaning that we're still a very interesting, competitive, interesting market for buyers to actually come in France. Right now, the rates have dropped since beginning of 2024. And what we see is when in 2023, it was more difficult for a non-resident to obtain a mortgage. It's really since January, the doors are open with the banks. So
what's changed?
It's basically, the rates have started going back down. The reality is that the French market was really on hold for at least a year. And the only way for a bank to acquire new clients is the mortgage.
Yeah, of course.
So if you don't give away mortgages,
yeah, you don't get
new clients.
Sure.
And we're talking about pretty nice profiles.
Well, exactly.
Coming to buy in France.
Yeah.
With assets,
Yeah.
cash to place.
Yeah.
So all of this makes things that the banks have reconsidered and are really opened in order to start again doing business.
So the interest rates, on average now?
So we're more close to a 4% right now. So we've had a drop of at least 1% on the last year. 4% makes is I'd say the average on a 20-year duration.
But 20 years fixed.
Yes, correct.
Which is amazing, right? Because in countries like the UK, it's variable rates.
You're absolutely right. You do find a little bit of fixed mortgage also in the UK, but it's true that it's not in the culture, and it's not in the culture.
Yeah.
In France, the good thing about it is that we're having fixed rate mortgage, which is renegotiable with the bank when the rates drops. We can have also some conditions in terms of negotiation with the banks of not having any penalties for paying back your mortgage early.
Okay, so lump sums.
Yes, exactly. Lump sums or the entire mortgage. Of course, if you want to change bank and buy back with a different bank, you'll have penalties.
Of
but
course.
this is also something which is doable. And usually, when the rate drops at least for 1%, it's always interesting to have a look at it and see if we can buy back with a different bank. The good thing for the client is, of course, to have, again, some better conditions and optimizing everything.
When you give a client that support, that is something that you can do with them and help them throughout that process, right?
Correct.
And you do it all in English?
Yes.
And if they're not like in X or around X, then you've got like all sorts of ways of keeping in contact with clients.
You're right. So basically today, our job has changed. A mortgage broker a few years ago would have meetings with his clients and see his clients face to face. Within the last 3 years, thanks to COVID, basically, we've had a kind of another way of working. So most of my clients are not actually here. A lot of them are actually in the US or in the UK, buying a property in France. I'll probably meet them once or sometimes never, but at least we'll have, let's say, not a daily conversation, but at least twice a week. We'll be talking on the phone or through WhatsApp or through any kind of Teams meet or any kind of
Visio
platform. And after what we do, everything is done online today. So we'll send everything. We'll have a meeting with a bank. The meeting in the bank will be online. Even if I'm based in Aix-en-Provence, the reality is that the bank is usually often in Paris, or because let's be honest, in the south of France, we're not very good about speaking in English. So usually, the banks will not be a local bank. We'll be more talking about a kind of national bank with an entity in Paris who's able to respond to all the client's requirements.
Okay, and that's something that you can do like super easily, and you've got all the contacts, so we can get answers quite quickly.
Yes.
You've got your list of documents, so I guess going back to how we started, when after I've sent you that kind of offer, which is not necessarily an offer accepted, because you kind of like say offer in principle accepted, but I need to check as well that my buyers can afford it. And so I need your stamp of approval before I get the signature.
It's also something that we do on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, we know if a file or profile is doable or not. From the start. If you tell me that this new client is XYZ nationality coming in France and has left his job, his employment, where he used to have a salary, and now that he's self-employed since 6 months, I'll tell you straight away, it's not doable. So you've got a really good basis for your experience, and once you receive all the documents, and I guess the documents are kind of like pay slips, pay contracts. I like to say there's a funny thing about it. There's a book called A Year in Provence, which was basically written, I think it was
in the 90s.
I would have said 80s, but maybe you're right. It's maybe the 90s. Sorry. And there's actually a chapter about it on how to obtain a mortgage. And a friend of mine who's British and who got a mortgage in France a couple of years ago with me has pointed out to me that the process hasn't changed. So unfortunately, we're French banking love paper. So I'll always ask for pay slips, for your birth certificate, your IDs. I'll have
your marital status.
I'll ask for plenty of questions, such as I need your bank statement within the 3 last months, and I need you to explain to me all the operation which might seem suspicious to a bank, even though it's only that you've just sold your bike or a couch on the internet. But a bank will start requesting this kind of information in order to know and to secure all the money transfer. And after it's pretty ongoing. If you're self-employed, I'll need to have also all the kind of
your tax returns.
The tax returns for the companies, and I need to have a bit more information about the companies and what's been the turnover on the 3 last years, and we'll do a kind of average.
And so I guess when we're talking about tax returns and we're talking about if you're self-employed, then are you able to advise clients as to whether to buy a property as an individual or whether to buy a property as a company?
You're right. So yes, we are. Currently, the market is no longer too much. The bank, at least not the market, but the banks are no longer willing to proceed too much with what we call the SCI, which are companies buying some properties in France.
I didn't realise that. So they've kind of
yes, because they prefer a non-resident because of all the taxes and all the way of presenting the actual file. A bank will prefer that you buy it as an individual than a company.
Which of course doesn't apply if you're a French resident.
Correct.
Yeah.
But even within the French resident, at the moment, a bank is more willing to look at an individual than a company. That's how the market, but this varies from time to time.
Okay. If you could give us, I don't know, your top 3, top 5 tips, what would those be?
I think we could basically count up to something like 4 tips.
Okay.
First tip would be to be well prepared in terms of who you're working with, meaning that you need to be talking to someone that first of all speaks the same language as you, because it's true that in France it's always a little difficult coming to France and not having someone speaking English to be able to help you with this project. So you need a good realtor. You need a mortgage broker. You need a good also notaire and a lawyer, because all this will have an impact on your purchase. All of those people need to at least speak French, of course, but English also, mainly.
It's addressing the nuances, isn't there? Because there's a lot of subtleties in the language.
Subtleties, depending on also all the question of legal, of the laws, of explaining why is there a little piece of your land which is also owned by the neighbor. All of this needs to be well explained.
The rights of passage,
exactly.
The servitude.
That's it. So you need to be clear on all of that, and also in terms of banking, we need to be able to actually explain to you properly all the conditions of obtaining the mortgage. So that would be my first tip. Second tip would be that you newcomers need to be a full transparent with us. You need.
What do you mean by transparent?
So when I'm talking about transparency, I'm saying that the mortgage broker will not be talking to the realtor about the financial situation of a client.
It's confidential.
It's confidential. But therefore, I need to know everything. I need to know if you have a car loan in the US or in the UK. I need to be able. It's up to me to judge what is needed in terms of presentation towards the bank. What we like to say is that we're painters, and our goal is to paint the best picture. And that's our duty. But for that, I need a full transparency from the client. I need for him to explain to me everything. If he gets a pay slip every month, but also has 50% of shares of the company, I need to know that from the start, because he's not a simple employee. He's also self-employed in a way. So this would be the second tip, would be the transparency, knowing everything about the client.
I never really considered you as an artist, you know.
That's what I do on my weekends.
Cézanne.
We're in the region for it. Third tip,
we've got two.
We've got
tips.
two.
What's your third?
Third would be, I think we need to be also someone coming from abroad needs to understand that everything needs to be clean, if I may say.
Okay.
Clean in terms of banking.
Okay, so your bank account.
So bank accounts needs to be perfect. I cannot have some debts going on and off.
Yeah.
I
So
cannot.
no overdraft.
No overdraft.
No unauthorized.
No
overdraft.
unauthorized. Even if it's authorized, it needs to be explained, and it makes the sense, because you're gonna buy a property. It's maybe not your first, it's maybe a secondary residency, or maybe it will be your primary. So you need to show, let's say, a perfect bank account.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense, doesn't it? No bank is going to lend you a sum of money if you can't manage the money that you've already got.
Exactly.
So it needs to be clean. That's what you mean by a nice clean bank account.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Fourth tip, I would say, it's that you need to at least have a bit of cash.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Buying a
You
property
deposit,
for a non-resident
right,
will need deposits.
Of course.
We also need to think of all the extra fees, notary fees.
So notary fees is an important one.
Correct.
Notary fees, we call them notary fees in France, but actually they're legal fees.
They're legal fees, yes,
and,
you're right.
And so on the price that we see, we need to add approximately 8%. I say to my clients, 8%
you're right.
is
Sometimes
legal fees.
you're right. We
Yeah?
could have a good surprise, 7.5.
Yeah.
But you're right, 8% would be the kind of way of thinking. But there's also what we call the guarantee fees.
Right.
Guarantee fees is what we call in French hypothèque, which basically is the bank taking a guarantee on your house in terms of lending you the money. If anything happens and you don't pay back your mortgage, they can seize the house.
Yeah.
All of this has a kind of extra fees. So what I would say it's there's about a kind of 10%, 10 to 11% of extra fees on the price of a house. And on top of that, so what a bank will want you to bring as a non-resident, it's basically from 20 to 50% deposit based on your nationality. This will, of course, vary depending on the price of a house, depending on plenty of things. A bank would also be able to offer you that they can finance 100% of the house if you don't put this money as a deposit, but as a placement.
Oh, okay.
This is also something that we can adapt.
Okay,
on.
and that's something that you've done previously for clients, and I guess that's why it's so important for people to contact you directly and to have that advice, that kind of like that proper professional expertise in that subject.
Yes, you're right. From the start, we'll know if you don't have any assets and you want to buy a house, you want to get 100% mortgage in France, it's not going to happen. But if it's a little tough, you're close to the 20%, and we're not too far away. This is something that we can do. We can check, negotiate with the bank, and we can work with it.
Yeah, and negotiating with the bank is something that you do on behalf of your clients as well.
Correct.
And I think just worth highlighting the fact that when we talk about fixed rates in France,
yes,
we do talk about fixed rates for the duration of the mortgage.
Correct.
So we're not
15, 20 years, 25 years for French people. When we talk about fixed rate in France, the rate is locked during all the duration of a mortgage.
Yeah.
Except if you renegotiate with the bank
and
when it drops.
And of course you renegotiate it when it goes down.
Of course, not when it goes up.
Yeah.
There's no way that a bank tomorrow, if rates explodes, go back to 8%, 10%, you're locked for 20 years with a 4% mortgage. This will be for the next 20 years.
Okay, that's amazing. That's really good advice. I love your 4 tips. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I say cheers to you.
Yes, cheers to you.
And speak to you soon.
See you soon.